Today, we are going to be talking about birth control, which I know can be a very controversial topic, but as a woman in my 20s, going on 10 years of experience with birth control and trying out different types of birth control, I did want to share my experience if this is something that you've been considering, or maybe you want to switch up your birth control type. I hope that this video helps you be able to make that decision. Now, I did already make my latte, so go ahead, grab some coffee, grab a matcha, a tea, anything that you like to sip on. But without further ado, we're just gonna jump right into it. So my first experience with birth control was actually with the hormonal pill. So I did start the pill in high school. I was about 14 years old, and I was put on hormonal birth control because at the time, I was actually taking Accutane, which if you don't know, it is a type of acne medication that you consume, and it kind of attacks your body from the inside out to kill acne. And with doing so, there are really extreme birth defects if you were to get pregnant, so they do recommend everyone be on 2 different types of birth control. And so at the time, my mom was with me, and she actually decided that I would be taking the birth control pill in addition to any other form of birth control at the time. I didn't really know much about it at the time. I know about the pill. I've known a few people that have started it that were a little bit older than me, but I didn't know about the side effects or anything like that until I was much older and did a little bit of research by myself. But with that being said, to be honest, I had one type of hormonal pill that I was on for the entirety of my pill experience. I never once had to change the type or the brand. I don't know off the top of my head what kind of hormonal birth control I was on, but I do know that I honestly did have great success with the one that the doctor placed me on right from the get-go. And honestly, all throughout high school, I had a great experience with taking the pill. I didn't have any throwing up that a lot of my friends had experienced, and that kind of changed when I went to college in 2020 when we were in the COVID era, being online on our computers all the time. I was having very, very severe migraines, and just a few months prior to that, I had been spotting in between my periods. So I actually went to the doctor because I was like, hey, I've been on birth control for many, many years. I haven't had any issues. Like, why am I spotting? And they just said that my body basically got used to the dosage that I was taking, so they decided to increase some of the hormones that were in the pill. So same brand, they just increased the dosage. And at the time, I didn't really see a correlation between the increased dosage and the migraines. They were just 2 different separate things that were happening at that point in my life. And after a few months of these severe migraines, not being able to look at my computer, listen to anything, have the lights on, it became really, really difficult to do online school. So I decided to go see a doctor, and I don't want to say it was because he was a male doctor, but I did not have a good experience with him. I had it previously. He's very much like a natural type of doctor, very much wants to heal the body with natural ways. And so I liked going to him, but when I came to him about my migraines, I did mention, I was like, I have been taking birth control pills for a while now, and I did increase the dosage recently. Could there be potential that this could be causing my migraines, or at least having a part in it? And he didn't agree with that statement at all, and he did instead recommend that I get Botox injections or acupuncture, which as a college student, I don't have the money to afford anything like that. So that was not an option for me. So I decided to actually call up my OBGYN. I did not want to go drive up to my doctor for this visit. I ended up calling the doctor and saying, hey, I have been on birth control for this many years. I actually have decided that I want to stop taking the pill for now. What can I expect from the side effects? And it was a woman on the phone, and I still had a very negative experience with this doctor on the phone. She was very much trying to convince me of getting all these other types of birth control instead. Maybe if I'm getting migraines from this type of pill, let's try a different pill, or the implant, or the shot, let's do something else. And I was very adamant about no, I just want to see how my body is without a pill, because if I'm still getting migraines, then maybe there is no relation between my migraines and the pill. So after a really heated phone call with this doctor, I ended up stopped taking the pill. She told me what I could expect after stopping, and very quickly, although I didn't pay attention to this, I did notice a big change in myself. I noticed that my energy was up, my libido was up. I didn't even know that my libido was down in the first place, but I felt myself coming out of my shell. I genuinely felt like I was shining, and I became very extroverted. And again, I don't know if this is in relation, but ever since I have been off of the hormonal pill, I have felt truly myself, which is a very rare feeling to feel because I was put on the pill at 14 years old. No one knows who they are at 14 years old. So to be able to be, I think I was about 20 or 21 at the time when I stopped taking the pill, that's a really big gap of years where a lot of people are still discovering who they are. And to experience this version of me was very, very unique. And once I had that feeling, I did not want to go back. So ever since that moment, I believe it was in March of 2021 is when I went off of the hormonal pill. I decided I am never again doing any form of hormonal birth control. Now, with that being said, that does not mean that I believe that no one should be taking any of the options, whether it's the pill or any of the other options. I do believe that some women could benefit from hormonal birth control, which I will talk about at the very end with my final thoughts. But for me personally, after experiencing this liberation almost, I decided that I would not ever go back to any kind of hormonal birth control, and I was just going to be very safe and use condoms if I needed. So fast forward in August, September of 2021, I actually enrolled in a human sexuality class at my college. It was part of the psychology department, and I learned so much from this course. It is basically, for those of you that aren't aware or who have never taken a human sexuality course in college, it's essentially like an advanced sex ed class, but in college, because our sex education around the world is, or at least within America, our sex education in America is absolutely horrible. So with this class, I was still very adamant about not taking hormonal birth control, any of the options, but my teacher did talk about a non-hormonal option, and I had never heard of a non-hormonal birth control option because so many people just throw the hormonal options in your face and say that these are like the only options you have as a woman. The only non-hormonal birth control option out there is the copper IUD, which is otherwise known as Paragard. Unfortunately, I did ask if there was anything else out there because I had just heard horrible horror stories about IUD insertions, and I was very scared about having a piece of metal in my body. I'm very much someone who likes to stay as natural as possible, but the thought of having some kind of protection if something were to happen to me, I did not want to get pregnant, and to know that there was something out there that could keep me as myself, keep my personality and my libido the same, I wanted to try it. And so I ended up scheduling an appointment with my OBGYN at the time to do a Paragard insertion, and luckily my insurance at the time did cover it, which is great because Paragard is very expensive if you didn't know, which is awesome as a college student because you don't have a lot of money in college. I made the appointment and I didn't go in nervous. I think a lot of women go into the IUD insertion with a lot of anxiety, which can make it even worse because you're all tense, your muscles are tense, you want it to be a very relaxing, calming experience. Luckily, I went in with a positive headspace, but I cannot say that that is how I left the experience. My first IUD insertion, which was November 2021, I have never had anyone down there with tools before, and they would not do a pap smear on me because of my age at the time. I believe in California, they do want people to be 21 years old before their first pap smear, and I was 20 at the time. So this is my first time ever having someone and something down there that is foreign to me. The PA was the one that inserted the IUD. It was not the doctor himself. Yeah, I did not have a positive experience, to say the least. Essentially what happened was I felt a cramping, they did the insertion, but afterwards I was lying there, I was crying, and I didn't know why I was crying, and I felt like I was hallucinating, like I was very lightheaded. I was looking around the room, I was like, oh my god, like I need someone, like what's going on? The pain was crazy, and it wasn't until afterward, like about 3 to 5 minutes, the nurse came in and was like, hey, like, are you ready to go? I was like, no, like I need a minute. She was like, okay, well here's like 2 or 3 Tylenol to take. And I'm like, 2 to 3 Tylenol, like that's it? And I found out later, and I don't know if this is accurate, so don't quote me, but I heard that the IUD insertion feeling is very similar to a contraction for pregnancy because they're essentially forcing your cervix open, which I know sounds really scary, but that's essentially what is going on, at least from my knowledge at this point in my life. And so to know that that's what happened afterward, I'm like, okay, that makes sense as to why I experienced this pain. But honestly, what made it worse, I think, was the fact that I was pretty alone in the experience. I ended up driving myself back to my dorm at the time, and with the copper IUD, one of the side effects is that it does actually make your periods heavier and more painful for up to 6 months afterward, to the point where a lot of women actually get the IUD removed because the pain is so bad. Luckily for me, I had another positive post-insertion experience, so I did have increased like blood flow and cramps, but to be honest, just naturally my periods were not painful or heavy in the first place. So I do think that my body is just one that really benefits a lot from the copper IUD because of how my periods are naturally. Like, they're not that painful, so the pain that I was experiencing after the IUD was inserted was manageable. I did take Tylenol during my periods for the next few months, but it was manageable. And after that, I had a great experience, and the IUD does last, I want to say, on average 10 years. So I was like, perfect, I'm 20 years old. When I am 30 and I want to have kids, I can get the IUD removed and I should be good to go. And to me, it seemed like the best of both worlds. It was like a very short period of pain for many, many, many years of knowing that I'm protected and to know that I and my body will not be affected from the hormones that would be in my body. That was my experience up until November of 2024. So the end of last year, I started experiencing pain in my pelvic area and I had to go to the bathroom, which is fun. And I didn't know why. At the time, I was using a period cup, and I don't know if this is the cause, but I suspected that one time when I was removing my reusable period cup, that the suction from the cup pulled my IUD down a little bit and had dislodged it. And so after many months of me avoiding going to the doctor, I scheduled an appointment with a new OB/GYN, luckily, and she is great. I love her. I got ultrasounds done in March of 2025, so very recent, and within 24 hours, they were like, yeah, we need you to come back in. It's dislodged. We need to remove it immediately. And obviously, the IUDs are very expensive, so I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, if my insurance doesn't cover a new IUD, I'm just not going to have any kind of birth control. I did decide to have a new one placed if insurance covered it. Luckily, the doctor reviewed it, and my insurance did cover the new IUD. So very, very, very lucky. And this IUD insertion experience was 10 times, a million times better, to the point where now I would recommend women to actually get the IUD inserted. What happened this time is I took my boyfriend with me. So I had someone with me, which helped a lot. Whether it's a partner or a family member or friend, just have someone with you, because it really just makes it so much better, especially post insertion. To know that someone's with you, taking care of you, is very helpful for the mind, and let me calm down at least. And the doctor also was very vocal about what she was doing, what she was like inserting. She also put some lidocaine up there so that it kind of numbed the area as much as possible before inserting it. The removal of the first one also was very seamless. She had me like breathe out, and when I breathed out, she pulled it. I basically didn't feel it, but the insertion definitely still hurt the second time around, because again, they're still forcing your cervix open, but it was a lot easier. And the doctor this time let me stay in the room for as long as I needed. There was no rush of getting me out of there. I also took some Tylenol beforehand, which I did think helped, but they provided me with some apple juice after, some additional Tylenol if needed. I still experienced more cramping for the next 2 months, but honestly, great experience. And again, it lasts me another 10 to 12 years. So this one for sure is going to last until I'm ready to have children, which is great. That's the whole point of having the IUD, in my opinion, is the long-lasting potential of it. So that was in March 25, and I have had no complications since then. I have since switched to the reusable period disc instead of the cup to avoid that potential of the dislodging from the suction. So that's a change I've made. But yeah, it's been super positive ever since, and I anticipate it being very positive the next few years. Now, I also have experience with natural cycle tracking using my Oura Ring. I believe that there's other kinds of smart rings out there that can track your cycle, but I got the Oura Ring around the same time that I got the second IUD inserted. I actually got it more for fitness purposes, but it actually worked out because at that time when I was thinking about whether or not I wanted to get a new IUD inserted, I was like, you know what, I could use the Oura Ring to just track my cycles. A friend of mine out there actually does this, and she's had great success with it. So I have had the Oura Ring for a few months now, and I will say it is very, very accurate in terms of period prediction and ovulation prediction. Now, in terms of like the luteal follicular phases, I don't know how accurate that is, but in terms of period and fertile window prediction, very, very accurate. And I know this because I've always been able to feel my ovulation cramps in addition to my period cramps, so I always kind of knew when I was in my fertile window. Comparing my body to the actual ring, I can tell that it is very accurate. And so if you are someone who does not want to have any kind of birth control, like you don't want to take any kind of pill or any kind of anything in your body, I would actually recommend the Oura Ring or any kind of smart ring that tracks your cycles. I think that it is very beneficial for a lot of women out there if that's something that you've been considering. Now that I've shared my full experience with you, it is time for my final thoughts. So like I mentioned, after my hormonal birth control pill experience, just because I personally would not get hormonal birth control does not mean I think everyone out there should completely disregard hormonal birth control. I know a lot of women in my life where hormonal birth control has been very, very beneficial, especially if you have painful or heavy periods. I have found that certain forms of birth control have really, really helped these women in my life with their everyday life. If you are someone that does experience those side effects just from your natural period, having hormonal birth control that can decrease that can really help, especially because when I was on the pill, I did notice at one point my period stopped completely. And so if you are someone that just wants to not have a period, then I would recommend hormonal birth control. For me, I actually liked experiencing my period, so I didn't like that mine disappeared, but there are other women on the other side of the spectrum that just want it gone because it's so painful. So I understand, and for that reason, I would not write off hormonal birth control for everyone. Based on the hormonal options, I would actually still go either the pill or the IUD route. Every body is different, but I do know a few women in my life who have had the shot in their arm every 6 months and the implant, and they've actually gained a lot of weight from it. I don't know if that is causation, but it is potential correlation, so just keep in mind that that is something that could happen. I like the IUD, whether hormonal or non-hormonal, just because it lasts so long, but definitely choose what you think will work best for your body. And I did mention this in terms of switching from the period cup to the disc, but if you are going to get an IUD inserted and you want to use reusable period products, I do not recommend using the period cup. Just from my personal experience, the disc has worked great because the disc does not use suction to stay in place. So I'm still very cautious, just because when my IUD did get dislodged, I could feel it and it was very painful. So I know exactly what that feels like, but the disc has been great. Overall, I do believe in hormonal and non-hormonal birth control options. And I really think it really just depends on everyone out there and what's going to work best for you and your body. And so I really hope that my experience with all three options has helped you make a more educated decision on what would work best for you and your body at this point in your life. If you have any questions or would like to know more about my experience, feel free to comment down below. But if not, I hope you all subscribe and join our community, and I will see you all for the next video. Bye everyone.